Yes, Secretary Brinkley.
Thank you. Yeah, I had voted before that we move the recommendations forward, as you'll recall, I think back in January, December, whatever it was, so that the legislature could take up some of the policy guidelines, and then the funding work group was crafted to do some additional work to it. I can tell you I'm going to vote against this. And I'm going to vote against this because I am concerned about the product that we have in schools. The mission that we were moving forward with was certainly to go back and carry forward some of the formulas from Thornton. But my concern, and maybe it's woven into the timeline that we also have, which will be a different vote and maybe a different conversation. But I want people to understand the context where I am here. We heard a comment at 11:30 here by Senator Pinsky, and I know that he's not here to respond to this, so I'll use my words in the way that I feel is judicious. That he was going to move forward with some recommendations outside of what this group is going to forward to the legislature, to ignore one of the phase-in aspects, and part of what he said in that conversation was also to identify revenues so that it could be accelerated. And while I appreciate the honesty and the forthrightness of that, to me, that undercuts some of the work that this group has spent 3 years doing and moving forward. And I will also point out, because some of our concerns are, where is the money coming from? We have deflected the short-term cost so that there can be, I guess, a further examination of what's going on, but then pushing the costs to the back. My concerns that I said in one of the last meetings is identifying what it is that would give us the biggest impact. What we're trying to do is do everything. Identify what could give us the biggest impact so that should we have funding challenges moving forward, just as we did after Thornton was adopted, we could identify what would give us the biggest benefit. So it's finding the sources of the revenue that is significant and reliable, because that's what we ran into before. Also, the counties have a significant concern on exactly where are they. Some of the conversation that you had earlier, the projections on what was going forward and where, excuse me, where they'll get the resources and how will they allocate it is very important. And I think laying something short of that and knowing that we can accommodate, what the demands are going to be, because our students are truly challenged by what's going on in the future. I like the idea of certainly dealing with the preschool concerns that we have to ensure students are better prepared. We certainly are focused on some of the other aspects of the group, but my concern is there still hasn't been necessarily a prioritization or identifying that everything has to move forward in that capacity. And then finally, excuse me, the accountability was certainly integrated at some point in time. And I guess this comment goes to the members of the legislature, not just that are here, but also those that will be serving down the road. When Thornton was adopted, there were a lot of expectations. And there was, I think, some very important things that we were targeting with that. But to the accountability, in 2006, there was a vote taken by the State Board of Ed where you had failing schools in Baltimore City. And on House Bill, I think it was 1215, it was Delegate Salima Marriott's bill that came in as a $100 million bill to build more schools in Baltimore City. The legislature chose to strike all the language of that bill because they had a so-called vehicle, and I get this is some insider baseball, but it's how the mechanics of it work. And they inserted language which undercut the actions of the State Board of Education in taking over 7 or 8 schools that were failing. And this goes to the heart of accountability. And that bill, sunset, went away after 12 months. But what it did is it took out the effect of trying to reinforce accountability for those schools that weren't performing with the resources that were allocated. And I'll point out to you that that was 2006, so potentially students that were in first grade, second grade, or whatever, they supposedly graduated last year. That whole class of students, by that action, may or may not have failed, and there might have been some other work that was taking place. But my request and hope that I pray for future legislators is that they let the accountability factors that get adopted, let them have some teeth. Let them really take hold, and let them really try to demand that the resources that are allocated, because a tremendous amount of resources are going to be allocated to education here, that we prepare them for the future. I still have concerns. Yes, we're setting up a group to do some work, and I saw on the last bullet that that group is supposed to close or whatever its work. I guess it's setting up something, but it wasn't continuing on. And accountability has to continue on, and that's the governor's concern. Is if we're going to put more revenues into these schools and facilities, that it not just be for pay raises, but that we actually prepare students. And we had one person posed a question yesterday at the meeting that you and I attended to address Kirwan. And she had a brilliant question. It was the very last question, and yes, we ran out of time. Joy, attempted to answer it, and I think answered it, but then the whole thing answered or ended. And she asked, what is the metric that identifies success? There might be different metrics that we've talked about through here, but how do I know in Montgomery County, this person was, that we're going to truly say we're either number one in the world, we're number one in the country, or exactly where we're going to be. And it was a brilliant question, a simple question, but we've talked about so many different factors to that, and I think that goes to the heart of what the governor's concerned about, is accountability. So I just wanted to have that laid out ahead of time prior to my red vote on this and my red vote on the timeline too. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. And by the way, I would like to close. Rachel, you and your team have worked very, very hard. And I know that in my capacity as a legislator before, we ask an awful lot of DLS and your team. And I said something to the two guys up here that how they kept track of where these documents were, I have no idea. But you've worked very, very hard. And so it's no reflection on the efforts that you all have put in, but that's part of the legislative process. And I just wanted to voice my concerns and acknowledge the efforts that they put into it. Thank you.